Hey everybody! In this video I'll start explaining about the interface of the CryEngine and how to navigate inside the editor. So for starters, when you run the editor exe, you'll be welcomed by this screen that lets you choose if you want to start a new level, to create one, or to open an existing level. By default, the SDK comes packaged with this forest level that is really great looking, and you can always load it up and walk around in it and see uh, everything, how it works. It's really well made level, and it's what actually got me interested in this engine from the beginning. So before we start with the navigation, let me just quickly explain about all these little icons that you see in the viewport. Now these are called helpers, and they define what type of entity you see inside the viewport. For example, these white bulb ones, this is they're light entities that you can very easily switch on and off. I'll explain a bit about this later when we take a look at the hover bar, but all you need to know is that the different icons means different types of entities. For example, this one with the little stars in it, it's a particle emitter, and you can assign to it anything you want, from fire to rain to smoke. So to hide all these helpers, if you don't want to see them in the level, you can very easily do that by clicking the H icon here on the right top corner of the screen, or by just pressing Shift and space. Now let's start with how to navigate inside the editor. As you can see, the big window in the middle, this is the viewport. And basically, if you ever played any video game like first-person shooters, you'll feel right at home, because the control scheme here is that you move the camera by pressing the W, A, S, and D keys, just like playing a video game. Yeah, for example, if I press W, the camera starts moving forward. If I press A, it starts moving left. D moves the camera right, and S moves it backwards. And to rotate the view, you can press and hold right mouse button while moving or while standing still. It doesn't really matter. So for example, I start moving with pressing W, and then by pressing and holding right mouse button, I can rotate and look around the editor. If I just press and hold the middle mouse button, it will pan around the viewport. If you press Alt and middle mouse button and you start moving the mouse around, you'll notice that the camera stays locked and focused on the center of the screen, and you can just rotate around this center. Now, if you press Shift while pressing W, you start noticing that the camera moves a lot more faster. That's because the Shift corresponds to the sprint button, and that takes us to the next thing. You can very easily spawn a player inside your level, and you can just walk around and shoot things, stuff like that. To do that, you can, to switch to game mode, you just press Ctrl and G. As you can see right now, I spawned the player, and by default it has two weapons. The weapons are really useful because they let you test if you applied the correct collision materials. So for example, I applied a rock material to this stone tiles texture, so if I shoot it now, you see that it spawns the correct particles and interacts properly with the bullets. So yeah, you can move the player inside in the game mode just like any first-person shooter with the movement keys. Shift is again for sprint. Control lets you duck and crouch. And if you press space, you jump. Now, now that we've taken a look at how to move inside the editor with the movement keys and the mouse, yeah, just to add another thing, if you don't like, for some reason, using the movement keys, you can move forward or backward by using the mouse scroll button. But yeah, seriously, it's a lot easier using the movement keys. It's really like just playing a game. So now that we went through this, we can start looking at the interface parts. Now let's just focus on the viewport. All these statistics here, they show you a variety of statistics for the frames per second on the bottom. They show you how many shadows, how many polygons are rendered right now in the scene. This is really helpful and it helps you determine how heavy is your scene and how well it will run. So on the little above the statistics, there are a few buttons here that, let's go one by one. This search bar here lets you, for example, this prop here, it's named Forest Rock. You see that when the mouse cursor hovers over the entity, its name will show up. And if you want to see the whole every entity name inside the scene, you just press and hold space while enabled the helpers, of course. If you didn't enable the helpers, even if you press space, nothing will come out. So if you, for example, you want to see only the rock props in the level that are named this way, you just type rocks. And it will isolate and show only this type of rock in the level, except of course the terrain and the vegetation brushes. The vegetation brushes can be turned off using different methods. So now if you clean the search bar, you return to the whole scene, everything it's in there again. Now this FOV, it's about the field of view degrees inside the viewport. The lower value means that you get a much narrower window and you can't really see a lot of objects using this low field of view. So if you right click on it, you can very easily choose between different presets, or if you click on custom, you can just press your own desired field of view. I think that 65 is pretty good for now. Now the ratio tab shows you the ratio of the window of the viewport. If you right click on it, you can choose between some predefined presets like 16:9 ratio, 16:10, 4:3. Again, you can add your custom one. Right next to it, it's the current resolution of the window. If you click again, you can resize this window, for example. And on the lower part of the viewport is this walk selection button. Basically that means that, for example, if you selected one or multiple objects, to select multiple objects, just click left click on one object, press Control key and press on some other object that you would like to select, and that selects them both. And if you press walk selection key, that means that you won't be able to select anything else in the scene except these two objects. This is sometimes helpful, especially if you don't want to move any prop by mistake while interacting with some other stuff. So to disable it, just click again on it. Right next to it, these fields for X, Y, and Z axis, they show the world coordinates in which this object is placed. Now, if you see that if I move the object, its coordinates of the Z axis is changing because I'm moving it on the vertical scale. But more on that later. Now, this one is really useful, the speed tab. Right now it's on 0.1. That determines how faster the camera will move inside the level. So for example, if you need to cross a very large distance of the terrain and you don't want to waste time, you can just set it to 1 and you'll see that now the camera moves a lot faster. But yeah, I put it on 0.1 because it gives me a lot more freedom inside this closed space and caves. AI in physics button means that if you have physicalized objects such as ropes or cloth, anything that uses the physics system inside CryEngine, it will show reacting properly inside game mode when you start your player or just go somewhere near the object. This little button here means that the camera won't go through the terrain if it's clicked on. Let me just get out very quickly from the outset and I'll show you what I mean. Let me just decrease a little bit the depth of field. So now it's turned off. So I can go through the terrain. But if I click it on, the camera won't be able to go below and through this terrain. It will just slide on its surface. Okay, so let's continue. This button mute audio, it's self-explanatory. Let's start explaining the upper part of the interface a bit. Some of this stuff, especially for people that are working with any kind of 3D packages such as 3ds Max and Maya, they'll feel right at home, and some of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory, but still. If you press New, it will you'll be able to create your own new level. Here on Name, you can type the name of your level. Yeah, I recommend using this option checked on, use terrain. Otherwise, if you uncheck it and create a new level, you end up only with an ocean in the level with no terrain. So from here, the height map resolution controls how big the level will be, combined with the meters per unit option. So for example, here, if the height map resolution is 1 by 1 square kilometer and the meters per unit are 2, the terrain size will be 2 square kilometers. But if I just set meters per unit to 1, it will get twice as small. So that gives you some variety of how big your level could get. If you want a really big level, you can just make it something like 4 square kilometers, something like that. Now, Save As lets you create a copy of this level, the current level that you're on. If you type another name, it will create a copy of this level, but it will be different level, differently named, so you can very easily modify it without changing anything important in the original level. The Pack Manager. The Pack Manager, if you take a look at the forest level, you'll see that all the textures and objects for this level are this big pack files that are corresponding for the textures and geometry and such. So when you're pretty much done with your level and you want it to be more organized and better structured, you can just create it. You can archive all your textures and props inside these big pack files, and you just hit create pack file, and then you can add all your textures for one pack file or all your CGF files that are for the geometry. Yeah, right now this is not so important. From edit, this is the usual buttons, undo, redo. Most of these buttons are placed on more than one place in the interface. For example, this button here is for the undo. This one is for the redo. A nice option in the edit menu is select objects. From here you can very fast select any prop that you placed inside the level. From the right portion of its window you can choose between the types of entities that you want to be shown inside the search view. For example, if you want to be able to see only the brushes, that by brushes in CryEngine they mean the geometry, the 3D props, you can click none to clean all these categories and then just only press brushes, and what you get here on the window on the left, it's only geometry props. You can very easily switch between different kinds of groups and filters. Now in modify, most of this stuff will take a more detailed look when I explain about move and rotate and scale. But one very helpful option here, it's save and load objects. So for example, I want to save a specific group of objects in the level. I select these two rocks, for example, and then I save them, and I name something like rock group. I save them, and even if I delete by mistake or some other reason these props, I can again get them into the level by just load them as this saved file, and as you can see again they get inside the level. From the display tab you can choose between wireframe mode and point mode. The wireframe will show you only the wireframe of all the geometry props in the level. It won't show you any textures and stuff. Very helpful thing here is the remember location and go to location tab. So for example, let's see, you probably will make this very nice camera view in your level, and you would want to remember this exact camera position so later you can go back to it. So the way to do this, it's just to press Ctrl and F1, and then even if I rotate the camera and go somewhere else in the level, if I want to go back to this exact camera view, all I need is to press Shift and F1. You can create multiple saved camera states this way by just using Ctrl and any key from F1 to F12, and to get back to this view you use the corresponding keys but with Shift pressed instead of Ctrl. So yeah, again, if I want to create a second state, I just, like here for example, I press Ctrl and F2, and then to get back exactly at this view, I just press Shift and F2, and as you can see I go again, and you can very easily switch with Shift and the F keys between the different saved states. Now let's take a look at the configuration specs tab. Right now it's on very high. You can choose between these other presets. The main difference is that, okay, for example, if you don't have a very powerful PC, you can use medium, but I should say that the medium preset disables all the parallax and the displacement effects inside the level. For example, these stone tiles on the floor, right now they're using parallax occlusion. That's why they look so, detailed and not so flat. But if I switch to medium, you see that now the texture looks way more flatter because it doesn't use anymore the parallax occlusion effect. So yeah, the difference between very high and high, it's very cosmetic. Basically, the very high preset will give you the best post effects in the editor, better depth of field, better dynamic shadows, stuff like that. Now the group button, it enables you, it allows you to create groups from a selection sets of the objects. For example, again, I will select both of these objects, and then I just press group. You can just type anything you want that will help you remember this selection, and then if you click on the green square, you can move the whole selection everywhere, and yeah, it's really easy, and it helps keeps the whole level much more organized if you use groups. For now, we don't really need it, so I'll just, while the group is selected, go again on group and press ungroup. But first, yeah, if you want to change the position of one of the objects, you can just open the group without deleting it, and then you can move one of the rocks. You'll notice that the green shape around of the group will change dynamically. And when I'm satisfied with the position of the prop, I'll just again select the green square, and I'll just press from group close, and that again closes the group, and then I can just move again both of the objects. Prefabs, it's yeah, something very similar to groups right now. I won't go into details of this. We don't really need it. From sound, it's self-explanatory. You can disable sound or disable music. From the game tab, you can again, instead of using the Control G hotkey for spawning the player, you can just press switch to game. That will spawn the player right where the camera position is. AI, we don't really need it. It's for creating navigation paths for enemies inside the level. From clouds, you can create cloud entities. Now, tools, this is really helpful. The first 5 commands are really helpful if, for example, you have texture that is not showing or is not showing correctly on some of your objects. And the way to fix that in most of the cases is just to press reload textures and shaders. Same goes for reload geometry. That will reload all the 3D models that you placed inside your level. And this resolve missing objects materials also is very helpful. It keeps the level much more cleaner, and you won't get so many errors inside here in this window. Now, for customized keyboard, right now I'm pretty satisfied with the way they set the hotkeys for the commands, but for example, if you want some customization, you can very easily do that by going to keyboard tab, and okay, for example, I want to set the new command for creating a new level to some key. So I'll just press L, I'll press assign, and I'll delete the old one that I made before. And now if I just press L on the keyboard, it will show me the menu for creating a new level. Yeah, it's really helpful. You can customize everything in this interface using the customized keyboard. Now something other very helpful, it's the Preferences tab. Now again, I'm pretty much content with the way things work in the editor, but for example, one thing that it's by default and I don't really like it, it's in the Viewports tab under General, this highlight geometry on mouse over. By default it's on. And yeah, as you can notice, every time my mouse cursor hovers over some object, it will get highlighted in this semi-transparent pink shell. So yeah, what I mean is that if you work a lot of hours inside the editor, this could get really tiresome for the eyes. So I prefer to disable it, and the way to do that, again, you go to the Preferences tab, Viewports General, and just untick Highlight Geometry on mouse. Again, here you can find a lot of options. You can increase the gizmo size. As you can see, some gizmo gets twice as big now, and if you want to set it back again, you can very easily do that by just going in here and press 0.2, which is the default value. Now, on View tab, the most important button is Open View Pane. From here you can open again every panel on the interface if you by incident close some of it and you want it back. From here you can choose everything from the time of day to the select object to the database editor. Well, we won't spare much time on this because pretty much it's self-explanatory. The more interesting one is the layouts option. Okay, for example, now if you click on this bar of dots near every set of icons, you can very easily move it around, and you can rearrange your interface layout. And if you want to save it in its changed state, you can very easily do that by going again to Layouts and Save Layout. And then next time when you start CryEngine, you can, for example, press Load, or choose between several different custom layouts that you made. If you want to restore the default layout, just press Restore Default Layout. Here you can choose between the dark skin for the interface. Right now it's this dark gray color. I prefer this one before the light skin layout because the gray color really it goes very easy on the eyes if you have to work longer on the editor. So anything else left? I think we covered the most important stuff for now. In the next lesson we will take a more detailed view look at how to actually move, select and rotate the objects in the editor. And yeah, I'll show you some more tips about using groups and also some hotkeys for object manipulation inside the editor. And yeah, that's it. See you in the next video.